Welcome to a very special abbreviated version of The Gun Show. We're here in Israel on a fact-finding mission, but I'm joined by my friend David Menzies because you were sort of an oracle on the trans issue long before we are where we are now. Tell us about the trans cat video that didn't see the light of day for a very, very long time.
Indeed, Sheila, 6 years in the making. I feel like I'm Nostradamus, although I wish I could translate the prediction to Super Bowl winners. But that aside, you might remember back in the early days of Rebel News, when we were Rebel Media, we went out to the Canadian Cat Show. When I say we, that was me and super producer and cameraman Ephraim. And the idea was, transgenderism in 2017, it's kind of passé, isn't it? It's kind of been there, done that. What is next in this crazy world where men are saying they're women and vice versa? And I thought, you know what? Why don't I enter a cat in the Canadian National Cat Show, which was part of Pet Expo? And but I don't have a cat. No problem. I'll identify as a cat. And sure enough, I went in there. It was kind of quiet at first, Sheila, and then all hell broke loose. Quite frankly, I think they thought I was an animal activist as opposed to a trans cat, right? But it was never explained. I was frog marched out of there by security. And the thing is it never aired, as you know. And I think, what I
thought it was too risky. And we were trying to save you from yourself. Oh. I want to preserve some of your dignity, David, even if you don't.
Sheila, my dignity, that ship sailed a many moon ago. But that, that is the truth of the matter. Sheila, and back then Hannah was part of deciding who got on what got on air. And it just seemed to be less of a news item and more of something from Monty Python,
right,
circa 1972, something that didn't quite make it to prime time. And then what happened? Well, Sheila, the world caught up with us, right? We came across Renee Detremont, a.k.a. Desiree Anderson. And this is a guy who identified as a woman. If you check out his picture, he's not even, at least Busty Lemieux puts on the fake boobs and the blonde wig. This is just a guy with an Adam's apple and 5 o'clock shadow, kind of like Ash Davis, the rugby player. And he identified as a woman with the ostensible policy reason to get into a women's shelter in Windsor. And of course, they let him in.
Yeah.
And shockers, within days, Sheila, he is charged by the Windsor police with sexual assault, turns himself in. By the way, to this day, we went back to that shelter, I think it was back in July, to do a stand-up. Weren't even on the property. We were on the sidewalk. And the young 20-something woman who worked at the shelter came out, and they started doing the chant, trans women are real women. This is even after this fraudster allegedly sexually assaulted another shelter resident. Can you imagine what is the most ultimate safe space for women?
Yeah.
But some of these are women that are fleeing from physical violence.
Right, and this is also the believe all women crowd.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Sheila, because even if you believe trans women are real women, and I certainly do not, what about a nefarious male who's a grifter, who's a misogynist, who's just using the trans excuse to get into intimate spaces of women? Do these social justice weirdos ever consider that? No. But the twist of the story, when we were in Windsor, we found out, he's gone from man to female to feline. Cody Detremont, a.k.a. Desiree Anderson, now identifies as a cat. We spent a weekend looking for him. We spoke to eyewitnesses. They've seen him. He has little Halloween props like pointy ears and a tail. And he walks up and down the streets of Windsor. And I'm sure the people at the women's shelter think this is another great example of diversity, equity, and
inclusion. To the animal shelter.
Yeah, we should. That's right. And you know what? I'd hate to be a shelter employee, the animal shelter, that is, Sheila, because in this day and age of acceptance, or else you're a bigot, a hater, a transphobe, they would probably say, oh, you're a trans. Okay, come on in. What the heck, right? And the thing is, Sheila, so I guess it was 6 years in the making, like some Cecil D. DeMille movie. But again, I guess the moral of the story, no matter how insane we can pitch something, this crazy world will catch up to us.
And you see it all the time on the internet. You can't even tell a joke because people think you're serious, because the left is truly beyond parody. You can't even make fun of them anymore because even your most outrageous fever dream, they've done something more extreme than that.
100%. And I think one last point, Sheila, is that once upon a time, people like Cody Detremont, they weren't hailed for diversity.
Lock them up.
Exactly. For his protection and ours.
Yeah.
But we deinstitutionalized so many mental patients over the years. We closed down the asylums. We said, here are some medications. As long as they stay on their meds, everything will be fine. That's a big if, by the way.
Yeah.
And here we are where, it's not quite the inmates running the asylum, but more like the inmates advising the asylum. And if you have a problem with that, you're not trying to help somebody who has probably mental illness. You are, as I said before, a hater, a bigot, a transphobe. And now it's not transgenderism or transvestite, being a transvestite. It's transspeciesism.
Yeah.
Right. Unbelievable.
Now, we're in Israel.
Yes.
Even though we're talking about trans issues, which I remarked last time we were here in 2018 that all the young people are normal here.
Yes.
I think it makes me an advocate for mandatory military service because there's no weird young people here. But this is our first full day on the ground here. What's the most interesting thing you learned today?
You know what? On the theme of Israel and trans, if you will, I couldn't help but notice I spotted at least 3 pride flags as we drove out of Tel Aviv into the countryside. And why that's notable, that's no big deal back where we are. Now Pride season will be Pride year, for goodness sake.
The bank is gay, the grocery store is gay, yeah.
and then it's way beyond June 30th. But Sheila, I think there was a profound point here, and that is we had for several years in Toronto at the Pride Parade a group called Queers Against Israel Apartheid. Queers Against Israel Apartheid, condemning the hateful state of Israel, condemning its so-called apartheid policies. There are but 2 pride marches in the entire Middle East, in this entire neighborhood. Both of them take place in Israel. And by the mere sight of seeing those rainbow flags, that is something that would get you in mucho hot water in this neighborhood of the world.
Right.
Some other countries. That is not tolerated.
Even other parts of Israel that are controlled by the Palestinians.
And I'm just saying, this is how insane the far left is that you are condemning a nation for apartheid, and yet you are queer, but the only pride parades are in that so-called apartheid state. You know as well as I do, Sheila, that Israel is not an apartheid state.
It is, but for the Jews.
Yeah.
There are places that the Jews can't go. I remember when we went to Bethlehem last time, we had to take out our Jewish tour guide and get a Christian one so that we could go to Bethlehem because he couldn't go behind the security wall.
100%. But the idea that if you're Arab, if you're gay, that there's some sort of apartheid system, it's absolute nonsense. It's poppycock. And what I think is interesting, if that group, Queers Against Israeli Apartheid, and it's since disbanded, right? Thank goodness. But if the name of your organization, right, apartheid, is based on a lie, because there is no apartheid in Israel, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah. Then
what is the real motivation back when that group existed during the Toronto Pride Parade? I would say it's this, Sheila, good old-fashioned garden variety anti-Semitism.
Yeah.
Because, as I said, there is no apartheid. Apartheid's part of your name. You are really just haters of Jews and haters of the state of Israel, even though this is the only neighborhood where you do see pride parades in the Middle East.
Yeah, and I think Joel Pollack, who is with us on the trip, Joel Pollack from Breitbart, he sort of hinted on the fact that young people today are told to hate wherever they live. They're told to hate the United States and think of it as a genocidal state.
Yes.
And so why wouldn't you then hate the most American part of the Middle East, where liberty reigns true, a place that was sort of founded the same way the Americans were, of war, of war of independence, same thing. This is a place where democracy reigns, human rights reign. So why wouldn't you hate it as an extension of hating the United States?
100%. And I think it's worse than that, Sheila. It's the fact that they're told to hate some people, someone, some nation, and they don't even know why.
No,
They're just said, hate them. And they go, yes, boss.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
It's true. Kian behind the camera is giving me one of these, which means that we have to get back on the tour bus. Thank you to everybody at home who is very patient with me as we film this sort of on the fly. We have a real tight packed sausage of a week here, as David Menzies says. Thanks to everybody in the studio who will put this together very quickly, dealing with our very slow upload speeds here as we travel. And remember, don't let the government tell you that you've had too much to think.